I always believed life had a quiet, predictable rhythm. Mornings with lukewarm coffee, the hum of my car engine on the way to work, my name, Martha Collins, neatly printed on a worn office door. 45 years old, a mortgage, a cat named Leonard, and a daughter who called me only on holidays. Safe. Average. Unremarkable. I used to find comfort in that. Until the day my heart betrayed me. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day you forget the moment it ends. I was in line at Gerald's Market in Portland, Oregon, scrolling through my phone, reading headlines I didn't really care about. Unrest in the Middle East intensifies. Seismic activity in the Pacific. Church attendance reaches historic low. I thumbed past them like they were just static noise. I was more concerned with a sale on almond milk. And then it happened. A pain, sharp and violent, bloomed in my chest. My phone clattered to the ground, and I felt the air collapse inside my lungs. I stumbled, my vision narrowing into a dark tunnel. The last thing I remember was the dull sound of someone screaming my name, Martha. Martha. Before the world folded in on itself. When I woke up, I wasn't awake. I hovered above myself, watching paramedics kneeling over my body, their hands pressing rhythmically against my ribcage. My face was pale, lips tinged blue. One of them shouted for more adrenaline. Another barked out time stamps. I should have panicked. Instead, I felt untethered. As if I'd been cut loose from gravity, drifting somewhere both inside and outside of time. And then I was falling, no longer hovering but being drawn downward, or inward, through layers of something thicker than air. It wasn't darkness, exactly. It was something between colors, between sensations. A velvet void, but alive. Breathing. I didn't question where I was going. I questioned why I felt so calm. Until I saw him. At first, I didn't see a face. Just a radiance. A presence so overwhelming, so utterly other, that I instinctively wanted to kneel, but I had no body to kneel with. And then he allowed me to see. Jesus. Not a painting. Not the version from Sunday school murals with soft features and distant eyes. No. He was real in a way that made everything else I'd known feel like tissue paper. His gaze pierced through me with unspeakable tenderness but also with a weight I wasn't ready to bear. There was no conversation in the way humans speak. There was knowing. You were not ready. His words, or perhaps his thoughts, resonated through me like distant thunder. I wanted to speak. To ask why I was here, why this was happening to me, a woman who hadn't prayed in years, who treated faith like an old family photo, something to be dusted off occasionally but never really lived. But he was already showing me. I was being pulled again, this time forward, not in distance, but in time. And what I saw cracked something inside me. I saw the world, not centuries away, not generations from now, but soon. Very soon. I saw the final 24 hours before his return. A day that began like any other. People laughing, working, scrolling. Planes taking off. Traffic building. School bells ringing. Coffee shops humming with idle conversations. And yet, beneath the surface, there was something fractured. A dissonance in the air. I saw people ignoring the trembling earth beneath their feet. I saw churches filled with noise but devoid of spirit. I saw believers so comfortable, so distracted, they no longer recognized the signs that flickered around them like dying embers. I saw the sky. It looked normal. But there was a pressure behind it. As if something ancient was pressing against the veil, ready to break through. And no one was watching. No one was waiting. Except for a few. In the shadows of this indifferent world, I saw small flickers, a boy kneeling by his bed, a man whispering prayers on his lunch break, a woman sitting in her car, gripping the steering wheel, begging God for mercy without words. Tiny flames. But they burned brighter than the cities around them. Their prayers, so quiet, so easily dismissed by the world, were the threads holding everything together. And then I felt it, the unbearable grief in his heart. Not anger. Grief. Not because the world was wicked. But because the world had stopped looking for him. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go back. To do it right. His gaze softened, and without words, I knew. You will return. You must remember. You must tell them. The fall stopped. I shot back into myself with a violent gasp, the sterile light of the hospital room searing into my eyes. My chest burned where they had pounded against my ribs. Martha, stay with us, someone shouted. I wanted to tell them everything. But my throat was raw, and the weight of what I'd seen crushed me into silence. I survived the heart attack. That's what the doctors said. But something else had been resurrected that day. Something I didn't know I had buried. A soul desperate to pray. A voice desperate to warn. And I would. I would tell them. Because the clock is still ticking. And most people aren't watching. They called it a miraculous recovery. The doctors shook their heads, whispering about how close I'd been to slipping away. A minute more and we would have lost you, they said, as if I hadn't already been gone. They didn't ask me what I saw. They assumed it was the chemical fireworks of a dying brain. Some of them smiled politely when I tried to speak of it, but I saw the subtle narrowing of their eyes, the unspoken label, delirium. Even my daughter, Rachel, nodded with forced patience as I recounted fragments of what I'd witnessed. Mom, maybe it was just the medications. You were unconscious for almost 6 minutes. It's natural to see things. It doesn't mean they were real. But I knew they were. Because the world was no longer the same. Or maybe it was, and I had simply learned to see beneath it. It started a week after I left the hospital. I was sitting in my car outside the pharmacy, watching the people pass by, and I noticed something strange. A man in a gray suit crossed the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear, his face carved with impatience. As he passed a homeless woman sitting on the curb, her hands stretched out, his eyes slid over her like she was an object, as if she were part of the pavement. But something flickered above her. A faint thread of gold, rising from her like smoke, shimmering against the sky. I blinked, and it was gone. I dismissed it. I told myself it was stress, residual medication, the lingering echoes of whatever had happened to me. But then I began to see them everywhere. Thin golden threads, almost invisible, rising from people, but only certain people. A teenage boy gripping a Bible with shaking hands on the subway. An old woman in a tattered coat sitting alone in church after the service had ended. A middle-aged man in a diner, his lips moving in silent prayer before his meal, unnoticed by the couple arguing loudly 2 tables over. I didn't understand at first. But deep down, something in me whispered, they are the ones who are watching. The ones holding the sky in place. I began to notice the others, too. People who moved quickly, who laughed loudly, who chased everything but never paused, no threads above them. Their lives were perfectly ordinary, perfectly busy, perfectly detached from what was coming. And all around me, the world hummed along as if nothing was wrong. News reports flickered across every screen, strange weather patterns, unexplained tremors beneath cities, wars like brushfires igniting without reason. Pastors leaving pulpits. Churches closing their doors. People scrolling, consuming, forgetting. No one was listening. Except the few. The signs grew louder. One night I woke up at 3:33 a.m., that number burned into me like a brand. I felt a pull, and I walked outside, barefoot, onto the cold grass of my backyard. The sky looked normal, but I heard it, a low, distant groan, like the stretching of something ancient. There was a tear in the sky. It was subtle. Almost imperceptible, like the finest crack in glass. But I saw it. And I remembered what he had shown me, the sky is a veil, and it is thinning. Panic clawed at me. I wasn't a preacher. I wasn't holy. I hadn't prayed in years before this. Who would believe me? Who would listen to a woman like me? A woman whose own daughter barely answered her calls. But then I thought of the boy I'd seen in the vision, the boy kneeling by his bed, whispering to a God he had never seen, yet somehow already knew. And I realized, it was never about being worthy. It was about responding. I started praying again. Awkwardly at first, like learning to speak after years of silence. My words stumbled, cracked, sometimes dissolved into tears before I could finish a sentence. But he heard me. I knew he did, because the more I prayed, the more the golden threads became visible to me. And I began to see something else. Some of the threads, they frayed. Some flickered as if on the edge of being snuffed out. And some severed entirely, vanishing into the cold morning air. When a thread disappeared, I felt it. A weight, a loss, like the air itself sagged in grief. I understood, then, that these threads were more than just symbols. They were real. They were the cords binding our trembling world to the mercy of God. They were the quiet prayers that no one saw but that heaven recorded. They were the pleas that kept the veil from tearing open too soon. I was beginning to see the delicate architecture of this broken world. And I realized something that chilled me. The threads were thinning. Fewer and fewer. One by one, the candles were going out. It became my obsession. I stopped going to work. I barely ate. I walked the streets of Portland for hours each day, desperate to find the golden flames, to speak with the few who were still watching, still praying, still waiting. Some looked at me like I was mad. Some turned away. But some, the ones with threads like mine, recognized me. We didn't need to speak much. We just prayed. In libraries. In parking lots. In laundromats. In gas stations. We prayed because something was approaching. We prayed because the veil was growing thin. We prayed because time was unraveling around us. The sky would not hold forever. And most people would not see it coming. But maybe, a few more candles could be lit. Maybe a few more threads could be tied before the final tear. I stopped marking the days. There was no point anymore. Time no longer moved in neat, measured hours for me. It surged, like a river swollen by an unseen storm, pulling me towards something inevitable. The signs weren't abstract anymore. They came as visions, sharp, disorienting, crashing into me like waves when I least expected them. In the grocery store. On the highway. In the silence of my bedroom. They didn't wait for my permission. The first time it happened, I was folding laundry. My hands trembled as I lifted a white t-shirt from the basket, and suddenly I wasn't in my house anymore. I was standing in a crowded city square I'd never seen, somewhere in Texas, maybe Dallas, surrounded by people staring at the sky, their mouths open, frozen. The air shimmered with heat, but the ground beneath us trembled faintly, rhythmically, like the pulse of something rising from beneath. I heard a voice, not aloud, but within me. The hour is nearer than you think. I snapped back to my house, breathless, the shirt crumpled in my hands. My heart pounded as if I'd run miles, but there was no one there to tell, no one who would understand. The visions came more frequently after that. I saw a coastal city with streets flooded not from rain, but from the ocean itself retreating, the sand left cracked and dry, the people staring, filming it with their phones, thinking it was strange but not recognizing it for what it was. I saw a church, opulent and grand, its walls echoing with empty worship, the congregation performing a faith they no longer believed, their prayers recited but lifeless, their eyes already turned toward other gods. I saw earthquakes beneath cities, but the people called them minor tremors and carried on, deaf to the warnings. But most of all, I saw the threads. They were everywhere now, these faint golden cords, but fewer, thinner, stretched almost to breaking. Many snapped before my eyes, and when they did, I felt the weight of it in my chest as if I had lost someone I'd known. Some threads glowed brightly, anchoring to the unseen. These belonged to those who prayed, not out of ritual, but out of longing. It terrified me how few remained. One evening, I found myself at a 24-hour diner off the highway, sipping cold coffee, unable to shake the feeling that I was meant to be there. And then he walked in. A boy, no more than 10, wearing a faded green jacket, who sat alone at the counter. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, his lips moving silently. I recognized him immediately. He was the boy from my vision. The one who had knelt by his bed, whispering his fragile, desperate prayer, "God, I don't know how to love you, but I want to." His thread burned so brightly it illuminated the entire corner of the diner. I moved toward him, drawn by something deeper than curiosity, a compulsion, a summons. "Hey," I said gently as I slid into the seat next to him. "What's your name?" He looked at me, his eyes wide but not afraid. "Elijah." "Of course. Elijah. How do you know how to pray?" I asked, my voice low. His answer was so simple it split me open. "I just talk to him. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I don't know where else to go." I felt tears burn my eyes. He was one of the last watchmen, a child, unnoticed, forgotten by the world, but precious beyond measure. "You're doing it exactly right," I whispered. He smiled, and for a moment, the unbearable weight in my chest eased. But the peace didn't last. That night, I woke to another vision, more violent than the ones before. I saw the final morning. The sky, not torn yet, but stretched so thin I could see the faint glimmer of something waiting behind it. People moved through their day, still blind, still scrolling, still building kingdoms that would soon collapse. I heard the sound of a trumpet, not the blast, but the breath being drawn to sound it. I saw cities trembling under their own weight. I saw the last thread snap. And then I saw myself. Standing in the middle of the street, my arms outstretched, screaming, pleading, but most people passed me without even turning their heads. I saw Rachel, my daughter, walking quickly away from me, her phone pressed to her ear, oblivious to the collapse unfolding around her. I woke up gasping, my pillow damp with tears. The terror wasn't in the coming of the king. The terror was in how few would be ready. I called Rachel the next morning. When she answered, her voice was distant, distracted. "Mom, I can't really talk right now. I've got a meeting." "Rachel, please," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I need you to listen to me. This isn't just about me being sick. I've seen something. I know it sounds crazy, but you need to start praying. You need to turn back to." She sighed. "Mom, you're scaring me. This isn't healthy. I think you're still processing everything that happened. I'm begging you. Just, please. Please talk to him. Just once. Today. You don't even have to know how. Just, try." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "I'll think about it. I have to go." The line went dead. I sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the vision crushing my ribs. I wasn't a prophet. I wasn't anyone special. I was just a woman who'd been shown too much. But I understood now. This wasn't about convincing the world. It was about calling to the few who would hear. It was about lighting the candles before the sky breaks. It was about praying until the last breath, the last second, the last heartbeat. I didn't know how much time remained. But I could feel the fabric thinning around me. The trumpet was about to sound. And I would not stop calling. Not until the last thread snapped. It began the way he showed me. Not with fire. Not with trumpets echoing through the clouds. But with the sound of normal life. Traffic. Coffee machines. Laughter. Airplanes rising into clear skies. A day that looked like every other. But I felt it immediately. The weight of the hour pressing against my skin like invisible hands. The air was too still. The light too thin. I didn't need another vision. I knew. This was the day. The last 24 hours. I walked the streets of Portland, heart pounding, searching for the threads. There were still some, flickering, strained, but present. An old man sitting alone in a park, clutching a worn Bible. A mother holding her child's hand, whispering a quiet prayer as they crossed the street. A teenager on the steps of an abandoned church, his head bowed, speaking softly to a God he wasn't sure was listening. But most of the streets were filled with people laughing, scrolling, arguing, consuming. The sky above them was thinning, the tear visible now, trembling at its seams, a gossamer crack stretching across the heavens like fractured glass. I tried to warn them. I shouted until my throat burned. I waved my arms, pointed at the sky, pleaded with strangers to look, to pray, to turn their hearts. But they passed me like I was part of the sidewalk. I saw the confusion in their eyes, the discomfort, the subtle retreat into their phones, their earbuds, their conversations. Just like in the vision. And then I saw her. Rachel. She was walking briskly, a phone pressed to her ear, her expression distant and impatient. Just as he had shown me. I ran to her, tears already streaming down my face. Rachel. I gasped. Please, please, just stop. Just for a moment. Please. She glanced at me with a mixture of embarrassment and irritation. Mom, what are you doing? I told you, I can't get into this again. The sky is breaking, Rachel. It's today. It's now. I've seen it. Please. Just pray. Just once. That's all I'm asking. Just call out to him. Even if you don't know how. Her voice faltered, caught between disbelief and something softer. Mom, this isn't real. You're scaring me. You need help. I grabbed her hand and pressed it to my chest. Feel it. Do you feel it? My heart knows this is true. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. Just promise me you'll pray. Even if you never speak to me again. Her lip trembled. I don't know how. You don't need to. Just call his name. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she pulled her hand away. I have to go. She turned, her steps quick, her voice rising as she resumed her conversation on the phone. I watched her walk away. And I prayed anyway. The hours slipped through my fingers like sand. The sky darkened, not with storm clouds, but with something weightier, as if eternity itself was pressing into the atmosphere. The trembling intensified beneath the streets. I could feel the fabric of the world fraying, the prayers that had once tethered us thinning, one by one. And yet, scattered through the city, I still saw them. The few. Kneeling. Weeping. Whispering the name. They didn't know they were holding back the flood. But heaven did. I found myself on a hill as the final hour arrived. The tear in the sky split open, and behind it. Glory. Fire. A brilliance no eye could bear. The king was coming. Not the gentle figure from the paintings. Not the soft-spoken teacher. But the judge. The warrior. The lion. And he came not in rage, but in justice. His gaze swept the earth, not searching for perfection, but for prayers. For the flickers. For the threads. I fell to my knees, unable to stand beneath the weight of his presence. And then I saw something I was not worthy to see. I saw the golden threads rising like smoke toward him. Each one carrying the names, the cries, the desperate whispered prayers of the forgotten. And I saw mercy. Mercy for those who had watched. Mercy for those who had prayed. Mercy for those who had called out, even once, even clumsily. Even Rachel. I saw her. Sitting alone on her apartment floor, her phone discarded beside her, tears falling as she whispered the only words she could form. Jesus, if you're real, help me. The smallest, most fragile prayer. But it rose to him like incense. And it was enough. The veil tore. The trumpet sounded. The sky broke. And the world was swallowed in a brilliance that no language can hold. I don't know why I was allowed to see it. I don't know why I was sent back to tell it. But I know this. The prayers of the few hold back the flood. Your prayer, even the smallest, weakest one, is not nothing. It is the golden thread that anchors you to the one who is coming. It is the candle in the dark. It is not too late. But it will be soon. Call on him now. Before the sky breaks. Before the final hour. Before the last thread snaps.